Brendan Rodgers is being considered as one of the potential replacements for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer as manager if or when he is sacked. It's kind of surprised a lot of people and not surprised others. What I'm going to do in this video is really help you understand the proper coaching, the style, the philosophy, the roots of Brendan Rodgers, his success, where it's come from, everything that his whole vision as a manager is based on. I've done plenty of research for this video, so if you would consider, please drop a like on it and subscribe if you do learn something by the end of it. But in this video, just like I've done with the Ralph Rangnick video, if you haven't checked that out, there's a link that's going to pop up now where I looked into his whole coaching, his style, the pillars that his philosophy is based on. I'm doing the same here with Rodgers and taking a look at managerial options for United and doing all the research so you don't have to, so you can understand exactly maybe why Rodgers is being considered. But let's dive straight into this one, and I hope you do learn something from it. So what is Brendan Rodgers' overall philosophy of how he approaches football clubs?
For me, it's always been about the top to the tail philosophy. So from the very top of the business to down with the kids, is this one vision. So I've always been about having just one club, one vision, and pouring everything into that and finding ways to connect everything together. But it's something, and likewise we here, it's finding a cause. I always go into a club, find the cause that's going to pull everyone together. And then, because ultimately it's about getting players to play for you. And how do you get them to play for you? It's connecting emotionally. That's ultimately what it is. You know, you can be good as coach as you want, but if you cannot connect the emotion of it all, then it can be tough, Matthew. And that's what I always pride myself in doing, going into a club and looking to connect everyone and have this one vision for one club.
If you're looking at what Manchester United really truly need, it is that somebody to come in with that overall vision. But I would argue Solskjaer had a vision somewhat, but fell short tactically quite badly. We know that by now. But the problem here with Rodgers, I would say, is how is he going to do that inside Manchester United's board when the vision basically above the managerial position is a completely different vision? The success for Glazers is a top four finish and repeating that every single year. The success for Brendan Rodgers and every player at the club will be to win titles and trophies. And that's where the visions clash. That's where I've got a big fear about what happens after Solskjaer, whether it's Rodgers, whether it's Rangnick, whether it's Ten Hag, anybody. That true vision that he wants to bring into the club, I think he'd struggle to do that at United on the same level that he has been able to do that at Leicester and Celtic and Liverpool as well, and Swansea. You know, he's had a lot of success in his career. But let's hear what Rodgers had to say about his development overall as a coach, because he's been on a long journey so far, and he's still very, very young.
I think you grow and evolve. I think when I first started, I probably was chasing that respect because I was never a big player, but I knew the game and I could always communicate with people. I think when you've managed 10 or so odd years and then people then start to see your work and they understand it a bit more. But I love genuinely to help people. It's a short career. And also the people outside of the game as well. I love them to enjoy their work and have an environment that you can connect everyone together with a common goal.
So in the same way as Brendan's talking about his overall vision of the club, he's talking there about connecting everybody together, talks about emotions, talks about this singular vision. And I found this little snippet interesting from this podcast here. Also, by the way, big shout out to Talent Takes podcast. Big shout out to Oxford Union. Big shout out to Bleacher Report. Big shout out to Coaches Voices. I've used clips of all of their videos. All the links to all of them are in the description. So thank you for them for publishing all of them. And I hope you don't mind that I've taken slight clips and put them all together into one overall video here on Brendan Rodgers. But listen to this little bit here about Brendan describing what he considered one of his toughest challenges coming into management at the start.
The respect was a huge factor for me because I had never been a player. You know, I'd never been to Robbie's level. I'd never been to the top level. So I didn't have that. So for me, I always felt that before anyone, and I've learned this through my journey, that before anyone ever would listen to me as a coach, I had to earn the respect as a person because I had no measure of what I was as a player to gauge, right, well, what type of football is he going to play? What type, you know? So I always felt that was something that people would say, you weren't a player, you're never going to get the chance. But I never seen it as that. My journey was just going to be longer. So I felt that the respect element was something that I had to earn very, very quickly because I didn't have that sort of background as a player. And I was happy with that. I have a huge admiration for guys that played the game, and I love speaking with guys like Robbie, and but my path was different. So initially there was lots of things I had to improve: my communication and knowledge and understanding of coaching as a subject. But initially I felt that I needed to earn the respect, and I would do that through the human side.
Now that clip there for me really sort of helps you understand exactly why Brendan's, he is a likable man. Everybody who's, I suppose, if you look at the clubs he's gone with, he's always left them in decent positions. Maybe it was slightly different in Scotland, I've been told, but I'm not sure whether that's the case or not. But Brendan Rodgers is somebody who has a lot of respect from a lot of people in the industry. He's not known as somebody who ruffles that many feathers. Now, for some people, you might say, oh, that means he's going to come in and be a yes man at Manchester United. Not necessarily. It just means that he's explaining that sort of likable side to his nature is his consequence. That's the path that he's taken because he didn't have the respect that came when you're like someone like Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard or Wayne Rooney. You can just come in and the respect that you've earned from the career. He had to do it a different way. And he did that by being approachable, by being that sort of human side that you can connect with. I found that little snippet quite interesting because it did explain that side of Brendan Rodgers as a manager. But if he comes into Manchester United, what's he going to do straight away?
I think when I first joined, Sam, it's given clarity around the vision and what it is we want to achieve, the fundamental principles of how I work. I always do a presentation with players to outline our purpose going forward. But fundamentally, it's how we press and organise the game in that moment, then that will dictate our offensive game.
And honestly, the more you research into Brendan Rodgers, the more you listen to him speak, he really reaffirms these concepts of vision. It's a massive, massive thing for him. Clearly, this overarching singular vision that's inside a club, going into a new club straight away and speaking about it immediately with the players, making sure that they know that the path that the club is now on, working underneath him. And I would say that vision is something that just definitely has been lost at Manchester United. It was something that Solskjaer came in with the DNA and the culture, and although he spoke in cliches, it was something that was needed at that point in time. And that was the first step on the ladder. The first ladder, sorry, I told you what got you here won't get you there. I explained that in a video earlier this season. I said that he's done that first ladder very, very well in re-establishing part of that vision. But the overall vision on top of that, in terms of the football, he wasn't able to translate. Solskjaer wasn't. But with Brendan Rodgers, that's where the big difference is between Solskjaer and Rodgers. And he's very, very good tactically, astute, an intelligent man. It's something that you really get from researching and listening to him speak. And something I found really quite impressive was Rodgers' sort of affirmation that although the style of football and the formation and the tactics are important, there's something that's much more important as far as he is concerned in terms of the philosophy of the team.
It's having a football philosophy, not necessarily a system. So you don't get fixated on the system because you can play football out of any system. It's the principles of how you play. So if you play in 4-2-3-1, 4-3-3, 3-4-3, 3-5-2, 3-1-4-3, it doesn't matter. You'll know what your brand of football can look like.
And I found that bit really, really interesting because, as I'd explained a little bit later in the video, Brendan Rodgers is a man who has tactically modernised as he's developed as a coach. You know, he's moved between formations, he's moved between styles. He used to be obsessed with ball possession, but now the obsession with ball possession has sort of gone away, and a different variety of formations has come into Brendan Rodgers' game as a manager the more he's learned. So that there, the overarching philosophy, and it's something that I've always said about Manchester United for years and years and years. It's like when you have that starting 11, or Solskjaer, up until one point at least, when we had that starting 11, you kind of knew what we were doing, but you took certain players out and you switched formation. It was like, it's a completely different team. Completely different team. It's like you may as well be wearing different shirts. And that's something that Brendan Rodgers there is saying that cannot happen. It's like whether or not you're playing the same 11, whether or not you're playing the same formation, you still look at that team and go, that is a Brendan Rodgers team. So again, I felt that part was quite an interesting snippet. And moving on to the next point I want to discuss, it's Rodgers speaking about what he considers to be some of the most important strategies that he's adopted that have been key to his success as a manager?
I think it's about it's given people confidence. I'm very much a strength-based coach, so I think when I work with teams, I like to look at players and see what they're good at, and try and develop that even more, and giving them a belief that you can achieve, because I think that there's so much talent in people, and if you can help them and develop that talent, and that's all I've ever tried to do with any player that I've worked with. You know, I enjoy the development side. I enjoy seeing people become better and improve, and then if you can pull it all together into a team format, then hopefully you can have success. So, of course, you need to have a philosophy. You need to have a clear identity of how you want to work, and then you look to hook players and people emotionally in order to help them dream and achieve what it is they want to achieve.
Honestly, doing these sorts of videos this week has been really quite fascinating, properly looking into different managers and their different approaches here. And now Brendan Rodgers there speaking about that belief in players. I think if we go back to when Manchester United went top of the league under Solskjaer last year and we finished second, that was where we really saw that the belief wasn't there. That the players, they didn't really know what to do at that point when they had people looking up at them rather than them chasing other people. I told you, it's a completely different mindset. It's all good and well chasing teams. When you're the team being chased, you have to be a different mentality monster. I think that's where Solskjaer's management fell down. At least one of the hurdles anyway. But Rodgers there really, it's quite impressive to speak to. As I said, it's a bit like when I looked into Ralf Rangnick. I understood why he would have admirers, and by looking at this and looking into Rodgers, I can understand why he has admirers and why some people would consider him to be a good coach for Manchester United next. But if we now move on from sort of understanding the pillars of his philosophy and his coaching and what's got him to this point, let's start taking a look at the actual style and the tactics and how that's adopted and changed over time with Rodgers. But there's one key characteristic that Rodgers hopes that people can see inside his teams.
So I would hope that after over 30 years now as in football and 500 odd, 50 odd games, whatever, as a manager, that people would associate a Brendan Rodgers team, how they play. And I play lots of different systems because I like them to be tactically good out of different systems.
So how that team is seen is quite important to Brendan Rodgers. So the style of it, the look of it, it's obvious. It's a bit like, as you saw from the Ralf Rangnick when he was saying, take the glasses off, and you know it's a Diego Simeone team. That's what Brendan Rodgers wants with his football team, for people to look at it and go, that is a Brendan Rodgers team. But let's take a little reverse back to Brendan, sort of explaining how his tactics have evolved over the years.
I think when I was a young coach, everything was with the ball, and then the more experience I gain over the years, then it's always in balance. You know, I like my teams to create goals and attack. I think probably when I was a younger coach, I was maybe very fixed on one in terms of 4-3-3. But as I progressed through my career, and I think the evolution of the game going forward in particular will be about tactical flexibility, denying space, creating space, having overloads in midfield. I like to think there's a flexibility around my teams that allows us to create and defend well.
Brendan Rodgers there explaining how, you know, over his career as he's developed as a coach, so have his tactics. And if we take a quick look here, it's not hard to see where that's happened. Swansea, he used a 4-3-3. Very much a tiki-taka style of football, quick, possession-based football, triangles, the Pep Guardiola style at Barcelona, which worked really well at that point. Then he went to Liverpool and he implemented the same sort of thing, with Gerrard in the middle, with Coutinho and Henderson, a front three of Sterling, Suarez and Sturridge, and we know how dangerous that team was. Again, based around the 4-3-3, but then as soon as you go to Celtic, that's where you start seeing the variety. You can see there he's using a 4-3-3 in certain occasions, and sometimes he's using a 4-2-3-1. And then you go to Leicester and the variety is still there. 2019-20 Leicester, more of a 4-3-3 of sorts, with Ndidi sitting deeper. Then the year after, he's sort of switching more towards three at the back. Brendan Rodgers clearly has grown as a coach, tactically as a coach, over his own career, and he's developed. And I would probably consider that to be one of the biggest pros about Rodgers, is his ability to tactically modernise with the game. Don't get stuck in his own ways, and sometimes it doesn't work. I think you could probably say that about Louis van Gaal, for example. Complete opposite. Louis van Gaal was stuck in his ways, and it just didn't work. It wasn't suitable to the modern game. That's why it jarred so much. Someone like Rodgers, clearly, it's worked for him in certain places. He's like, okay, well, that's worked at that point, but now I want to switch it. Now I want to adopt it because this is more suited to the modern game. He's got real tactical versatility. And if you take a look at this clip here, this is from his masterclass over on Coach's Voice after the 5-1 between Liverpool and Arsenal, where he's explaining sort of how he sees it on the pitch in terms of implementing the plan.
And our idea going into the game was to allow Arsenal to build the game so we could open them up. So they would open the pitch up. Arteta or Wilshere dropping in to get the ball. And then we would just get into sort of our midfield block, or sort of semi-position here to press the game. And then we would then really look to press the game in the central area or on the side of the field.
And that I did find interesting to see him speaking about how he wanted Arsenal to stretch the game out, to leave spaces in behind, and how he wanted his team to exploit it. Because ultimately, we haven't seen that sort of tactical understanding enough from Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. You know, we've seen it sometimes when we've used a 3-5-2 and we've used it correctly. We used it as split strikers away at Spurs with Pochettino was there. I always point to that game as a game where I was like, wow, Solskjaer actually can do it tactically. But we haven't seen that enough. From game to game, it can chop and change. And as Ralph Rangnick explained, there's no point in doing a little bit of pressing. And that's probably how United really pressed against Liverpool. That's why it didn't work. You can't do a little bit of pressing. But interestingly here, let's have a look at this clip. And this is Rodgers explaining how he implements these sorts of patterns into training to make sure that when you put it into practice in the matches, that the players do it properly.
Stimulating players is important. You know, if you walk out, Robbie walks out onto the pitch every day, or any player, and they can see straight away whether the pitch layout, the organisation has been thought about. If you walk out on the pitch and there's hardly anything down on the pitches, you know that maybe the coach hasn't really thought about this and we're just going to be doing the same thing. So for me, it was all about variety. It was always about preparing players for the game, but never forcing it, just drip feeding it in through the week, and then arrive into the weekend being clear in their role. But always enjoying the training. And I've always felt, and you guys will know, having been at the top level in your sports, that enjoyment for me also comes from working very hard. It's always about laughing and joking, and that is a part of it, of course. You need the fun element. I always talk about the fundamentals. You need to be strong in, and the first 3 letters of that is important. So you need to have fun. But fun, I've always been, the higher level you go is about work and mentality and working hard. And so always the training sessions have a big intensity, a big tempo, a big rhythm to them, so that players are feel physically and maximised all their qualities in that day. And then they come away and they'll come in the next day and do something totally different. All about their individual needs, but then how it always fits into the team.
Now, what did you make of that bit there? Because that's clearly where he's basically the polar opposite of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Solskjaer has come in and taken the sort of general manager approach. Sit back, sit in the office, let Phelan, let Carrick, let McKenna, mainly Carrick and McKenna, lead the training sessions, while Solskjaer sits back. Brendan Rodgers is a hands-on coaching manager, implementing the patterns in intense training sessions and making sure those patterns are brought into the game. And I think that's, again, that's probably a big pro of what United need next. We do need somebody who can do that, because clearly the general manager approach, I'm not saying it can't work, right? I'm not saying it's that won't ever work, because clearly it has worked. Fergie was the king of it. But it hasn't worked at United. And what we want to see now is why we've all struggled to really understand the philosophy and the style of United, because training's not been done really. Training has been done, of course it has, but it's clearly not been done enough. And when you train them, when you practice and you practice and you practice and you practice, it becomes second nature. That's what practice is all about. So when you actually get the opportunity to do something, you've already done it 60 times before. So while it might be people watching you do it for the first time, it's not you doing it for the first time. You've done it 60 times before in training. That's exactly what happens in football. I mean, I don't have to tell you that. You all know that. But it's clearly something that United haven't done enough. We haven't practiced our formations enough. We haven't practiced our defending enough. So when we do it on the pitch, it's not second nature. that will clearly be a bit different under Rodgers, and I found that bit quite interesting. Now, a point that was raised during the live stream that I did on Rodgers and asking you for the pros and cons about him, you questioned whether he would be able to manage the big name players at Manchester United. We've got Ronaldo, we've got Bruno, we've got Varane. How would Rodgers cope with them? This little snippet's quite interesting on that bit.
I've never seen them. I've only seen them as football players and as good people. And if I can help them achieve what it is they want to, I always ask them for commitment. And every player I'll talk to and go through a plan with them and find out what it is they want to achieve in the game, and then allow them the responsibility and create an environment for them to develop. So for me, it doesn't matter where you sit in the hierarchy, whether you're the best player or whether you work in the kitchen. It's about everyone together having a role to play in order for the club to succeed.
Now, this bit here is probably where Brendan Rodgers' earlier comments about, how he didn't really have the respect inside the game from a player perspective, from a career, so he had to earn it through the human side of things. And that's how he would have to handle the big name players at Manchester United. He'd earn the respect from the players like Ronaldo, from Bruno, from everyone by coming in and being a very good tactical coach, by being very hands-on, by having a proper vision that he's implementing into the club. The respect would come that way through his own methods rather than just on his own previous merits. And he's got no links to Manchester United. He's obviously got the links to Liverpool, but what I would say about that is that, Matt Busby came from Liverpool. And I know Matt Busby came if you don't know about tribalism in the United Kingdom in terms of the football rivalries, they didn't really come in until like the 60s. It was basically after United and the European Cup. That's when tribalism really started to come in. I remember doing it when I was doing my dissertation research. So the whole Busby and Liverpool situation is a little bit different to what it would be now with Rodgers and United. But in my opinion, it shouldn't be a reason to stop it. But that bit there, when he was speaking about big name players, sort of keeping everyone on a level playing field, for him to have the respect from the players, I think that comes from the human side and also from his abilities as a coach, with his tactics, with his vision. That's where he gained it from. But also, there's another little clip here where he speaks about how he developed the youth team players. And that's, again, another key aspect that we have to consider when looking at Rodgers.
For the younger kids, it was always for me about giving them the aspiration that they can achieve and they can be better. And they would get no more or less from me than the top player. And that was how I looked at. They were elite for being there. Could I then take them on the journey? I was never just specifically the best player, because the best player and some of the others, they'll get there in the end. And if I'm good at what I do, I'll help them get there quicker.
Yeah.
If I'm not so good, I'll hold them back.
So that's a little bit of an insight there into how Rodgers approaches youth development. And I'll be honest, you can see quite easily how a young player could come into Manchester United and be quite inspired by Brendan Rodgers, by how he approaches the game, by what he's done to work his way, because he's a bit of an example, really. He came into management without a sort of playing career and had to earn his respect the whole way through. So as a manager, he sets a good example in that sense. And if he can sort of pass those values and those teachings onto younger players, you can see how and why he is a good developer of younger players. And this final point I want to touch on here is when Rodgers is speaking about complacency and making sure that it doesn't creep into the mindset of any team that he's involved in.
I think it's when you're working with players and people. I'm no good if I'm in an environment where it's just about maintaining. I have to be constantly developing and improving and making better. So the trap you're always looking to avoid is that complacency. So when a team does well, sometimes you can soften up. You have it in normal life as well. You do quite well and you just go a bit soft. So it's important that you stay aggressive and you stay strong, and that's you're obviously constantly looking to create that mentality every day.
And I feel that bit there is a really good point to end on, because he's talking about going soft when you reach a level of success and you just maintain it. And I would say probably at Leicester, I'd say he's maintained it in the last couple of years. They haven't really kicked on as any higher than they've got to. I think they've sort of reached the ceiling. So in terms of whether Rodgers want the United job, I think it's obvious that he would. I think it is obvious that he would come to Manchester United if we wanted him. And that idea that he's not comfortable in an environment that isn't sort of always looking ahead, again, he talks a good talk. And that will be my conclusion from this video. Rodgers, again, I would say Rangnick was an overall more impressive speaker in terms of I felt like he was indoctrinating me a little bit more than Rodgers. It felt like Rodgers was teaching me, but it felt like Rangnick was indoctrinating me. And I don't mean that in like a negatively political sense, but that he just it was more impressive. His way of speaking was more impressive. It's not to say that Rodgers would be any less successful, but I can completely understand, having looked at this and listened to Rodgers for a few hours now speaking, I can understand why he has admirers in Manchester United. I think his Liverpool links make it difficult for some United fans to understand. His failures at Liverpool in terms of the failing with the title and failing with Leicester with the 2 top 4 finishes, and not having that top elite level is the biggest concern for United fans. But if you've watched this video, and I hope you have, I hope you've learned a bit about Brendan Rodgers, his actual coaching, his style, how he's developed over his career, and his overall philosophy. And maybe you can see how that could be implemented at Manchester United. If you did learn a little bit from the video, please consider subscribing. Please drop a like on the video too. And as I said, this is part of a series. Make sure you head over and check the video I've done on Ralph Rangnick. I'm probably going to be doing some more. I had to do one on Erik ten Hag. If maybe there's other managers you want me to look at as well, I'll look at them. But Brendan Rodgers, what do you think? Because clearly he's being considered as a potential successor to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Do you think that would be the right thing? You let me know in the comments below, and I hope you enjoyed the video.